exciting evening event. We're going to spend approximately about an hour and 15 minutes talking to you all about bringing beavers back to Ealing, which is really exciting. Every time there's a beaver reintroduction, I don't know, I find it really hopeful and really inspiring to see these incredible creatures coming back to where they should be, where they belong. They've got such an important role in the ecology of our landscape. And it's been missing. We've been missing them for a really long time in ways that we probably have forgotten or don't even realise anymore. So they're coming in and they're shaking things up, and I'm all for it. It's really good. And there's going to be lots of people who are going to be talking to you about bringing beavers back to Ealing today. So throughout the course of this, as I said, we'll be talking for about an hour and 15 minutes. Three of our brilliant speakers will have 10 minutes each to talk to you a little bit about their area of expertise, a bit about these amazing creatures. And then after that, it will be a bit of a Q&A session. So I'm going to ask them some burning questions because I'm really curious to pick their brains as well. But if you have any questions for them as well, please pop them in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat throughout. So even as they're talking, just put your questions in the chat and I'll keep an eye on that, and I'll ask them to some of our panel later on. But throughout, just a bit of housekeeping, this session is being recorded and it will be up on YouTube after the live is ended. If you don't mind keeping yourself on mute at all times, just communicate via the chat, that'd be great. And if you can turn your cameras off, that would be brilliant as well. But otherwise, I think we're just going to dive right in because I'm really excited I know a little bit about the project, but I'm really excited to learn more with you guys tonight about this amazing initiative. So I'm going to introduce our brilliant panelists. We've got Elliot Newton, who's the co-founder of Citizen Zoo, who will talk to you first, I believe. And then that will be followed by Dr. Sean McCormack, who is the chair of the Ealing Wildlife Group. I'm really sorry, there's a poodle downstairs barking. I don't know if you can hear her, but she will be quiet soon, I hope. Can't make any promises, but I hope so. And then after Sean, we've got Dr. Roisín Campbell-Palmer, who is from the Beaver Trust, and she works in habitat suitability and the feasibility of projects like this. So without further ado, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to hand over to Elliot, who's going to chat to you for about 10 minutes.
Oh, thank you so much, Megan, and hello everybody. Thank you so much for joining us virtually this evening. It's so great to see so many of you on the call, and yeah, really looking forward to telling you all about the exciting project that we have here. So just a quick introduction to myself. So my name, as Megan said, my name's Elliot. I'm from an organisation, helped to co-found an organisation called Citizen Zoo, which is all about putting people at the heart of rewilding and conservation projects, making sure that empowering communities and people to be a powerhouse, a driving force for conservation actions, just like the project that we've got here. But just very quickly, this is a very much a collaborative project, and there's so many partners that you can see on the screen here. I'll let Sean talk more about the Ealing Wildlife Group, who are an amazing group who are very on the ground, leading much of what's going on. We've also got Ealing Council, who are helping to fund the project, as well as the Mayor of London, who's helping to fund the project. The Friends of Horston Hill, who are a great bunch of volunteers who are based very close to the project and have been helping in so many different ways. And of course, the amazing Beaver Trust, who've been guiding the project from the start with the amazing expertise they have as forwarding beaver conservation across the UK. But I'll let Roisín talk more about that. But my job is just quickly to try and introduce you to the beaver, just in case some of you might not know about it. I just thought I'd just introduce you to the species and a little bit of background around that. I feel a bit of an imposter doing this because Roisín has probably the best person in the world to talk about beavers, but I'm going to try and do my best. So the first thing to say is beavers have been on our planet for quite a long time in some way or another. If you actually went back around 54 million years, we had some sort of type of beaver ancestor running around, and over the course of evolutionary history, at one point we had about 100 beaver species living on our planet. Some beavers were as big as and almost as big as a grown adult. So beavers are an incredible species that have been living on our planet for millions of years. But now we have two species of beaver living on our planet. We have the Eurasian beaver, which is the one we're working on, and of course there's an American species as well. They have the grand title of a sort of ecosystem. Well, I'm going to come to being an ecosystem engineer in a minute, but they have the biggest rodent, beaten just by the capybara, but they're still incredibly large. You know, they can weigh up to about 30 kilograms, so they really can be really significantly sized animals. And one thing I always like to sort of talk about beavers from at the very early point is to say how what they eat, because I think when C.S. Lewis wrote Narnia and he drew these, he written in those beavers cooking fish in their dam and eating the fish. I think that's confused many people over sort of the 100 or so years since he's writing that book. But of course, beavers are not in any way fish eaters. They are, of course, herbivores, and they can eat a whole range of different aquatic plants, and of course, felling trees, which help them access the landscape and stuff like that. They can live for quite a long time. They can live for about 7 years, really, and they live in small family groups, and they produce maybe up to sort of 2 or so plus kits a year. So they live in quite small, coordinated little family groups, but they are highly adapted to live in riverine and aquatic environments. If you look at them, they've got incredibly webbed feet, so they're good at moving around underwater. They've got thick fur that's waterproof. They've even got lips that can close behind their teeth, so they can still use their teeth underwater without drowning. And yes, they have some incredible adaptations to make them absolutely fantastic navigators of a sort of a watery world, which is pretty exciting. And one thing that they do is they are what we call ecosystem engineers, and I think this is a really good picture here of like demonstrating the amazing things that beavers can do. Because beavers, if a beaver was running around on land, you can see a good picture of the beaver there. If it was running around on land, it's sort of a bit open to, it's a bit of a podgy creature that hasn't got great long legs, so it puts it at risk from predation from things like wolves, because beavers still think wolves are running around in the landscape. So what they try and do, they help to dam and create these incredibly complex wetlands, and that helps them navigate the landscape and access food and live in a safe, help them feel more safe in the area that they live. So they create these incredible rich ecosystems that you know have so many benefits. Not least, they help to sort of make the land hold more water, so make our land reduce the risk of flooding downstream, which is so important in times of more heavy rain that we're experiencing with climate change. In times of drought, they help us to hold water on the land to help our lands be more resilient to drought as well as flooding. By creating these really rich biodiverse ecosystems, they help the land sequester more carbon. So they really are fantastic tools, or help, and a tool in our armory when it comes to help us, making us more resilient to climate change. But let's not forget, we're also in the midst of a biodiversity crisis, and the landscape that they creates a whole range of ecological niches for so many different species, from dragonflies to amphibians to water voles to so many different things. So they really are like an amazing species when it comes to bringing life into our landscape. If you just jump to the next slide for me, Sean, that'd be great, thank you. But how does this apply? How does this, well, yeah, one thing to quickly say is actually, so beavers have had a bit of a tumultuous history. You can see that they had a huge former range, but if you go back about 400 years, they were heavily hunted for a number of reasons: for their fur, for their anal glands, so castoreum, which was used in things like medicine and even for colorings of, for flavorings of drinks and foods and stuff. So they were persecuted heavily, which meant 400 years ago, they became extinct in the UK, which is an absolute travesty. And they were also reduced their population hugely in Europe as well, so they came to a bit of a bottleneck. But we're now living in a resurgence, which is great. We're seeing the time of the beaver is very much upon us. Scotland are much further ahead of England when it comes to this, with beavers being naturally said to sort of recolonize the landscape from about May in 2019. But in England, we've seen beavers become more and more prevalent, which is fantastic. Seeing more reintroductions take place. Things like the River Otter trial, which really helped to demonstrate the power of beavers within our landscape. So we're now really living in a time of the beaver, which is great. And as of October 1st last year, beavers were taken off the Schedule 9 species list. They're now a species that we deem to be native within our landscape, which is a very, very fantastic and positive thing. But if you just jump to the next slide for me, please, Sean, thanks. Yeah, so but beavers are also, but we know beavers are fantastic animals. I hope you've already demonstrated that, and amazing things that they bring. But how does this apply to the urban landscape? And it's quite interesting. If you look across Europe, if you look across North America, beavers are quite commonly found in sort of urban landscapes. From Berlin, this picture on the left here is from a picture of Berlin, a beaver living in Berlin. And we've also got beavers living in the heart of Vancouver there in Canada. So we know that beavers can live in urban landscapes. They even live in Perth in Scotland in a relatively urbanised landscape. And so that means that if we learn to live alongside beavers, they might be able to help bring a whole range of benefits to our urban communities, and we're helping to create more biodiverse urban areas and increase our resilience to climate change. So there's a few things that we've been doing. So over the past sort of 2 years or so, we've set up something called the London Beaver Working Group. And that's our people across London coming together to talk about beavers within the London context, which has been really fantastic. And part of that is as natural beaver populations start to expand, like populations in Kent and Oxfordshire, we're pretty confident that beavers are going to end up living in urban contexts like London pretty time soon, just by their own accord, just as they naturally spread across the landscape. So what we want London to be, we want to be London prepared for that situation. So when beavers do show up on their own accord, we want to be prepared for them and know how to manage them, and sort of, we can embrace them, and part of our sort of ability to future-proof our capital. So for that to happen, we want to know how to live alongside beavers. And as I say, this is commonly done across Europe and North America, but we want to make sure people in London, we know how to live alongside them. So we're working with a whole range of partners, as we've been able to identify Ealing as a perfect site, which I'll let Sean go in more detail about. But the real ambition here is to demonstrate how we can live alongside beavers in the urban landscape. And there's so many different things that we can do to help manage beavers, because obviously there will be some level of management that we will need to do to sort of mitigate and sort of manage the sort of potential conflict that there could be if they're not managed. So these are very some simple mitigation measures that I'll probably let Roisín go in more detail about, actually, for how we can protect trees, and also how we can sort of get them make sure they're in the right places. But yes, there's some really fantastic stuff going on. So I hope that gives you a bit of an introduction to what's been going on in the wider context, and a bit of an introduction to beavers. But I think Sean, I'll pass back to you, Megan, and then we can go over to Sean. Oh, I think I'll mute Megan, sorry.
I did the classic thing there. Thank you very much for that, Elliot. It's a great introduction to beavers. They're a species I've always really loved, but it's a species, obviously, they were absent from the UK for 400 years. So it's just mind-blowing to me that, they've been missing for such a long time, and yet they have such an important impact. If anything, we're lucky to have them. We're lucky that they can come and stand at the front of, climate change and try and be a helpful barrier in that, and also just be back where they belong. It's a really important missing piece of our landscape, I think. And make sure, if you have any questions for Elliot or for anything about what you heard, please put it into the chat, and I will pose those to the panel later on. But I'm going to hand over to the wonderful Sean next.
Thank you, Megan. So I'm Sean. For anyone who doesn't know me, I set up Ealing Wildlife Group in 2016. There's still a few stragglers coming in, so excuse me if I'm a little distracted. But yeah, set up Ealing Wildlife Group in 2016, and we've been doing lots of community conservation work and projects within the borough of Ealing, and we work quite closely with Ealing Council, and we work quite closely with Friends of Horsenden Hill now as well, on various kind of projects, including our harvest mouse reintroduction, which has been going on the last couple of years. I kind of jokingly, when we set up the harvest mouse reintroduction, said we're going to start with Britain's smallest native rodent, and then we might move up the scale to either the medium one with water voles, or why not skip entirely ahead to the largest one with beavers. So the Beaver Project has been sort of in the pipeline, or being kind of bandied around as an idea, for about the last 2 years, really. And this is some of our key team here. Behind me is John, our ranger, who looks after Horsenden and Paradise Fields. Martin Smith, who's the chair of Friends of Horsenden Hill, and I believe is in the audience. I thought I saw his name coming in. Roisín is going to speak next from Beaver Trust, and Elliot and Ben from Citizen Zoo. So there's been talks going on for about the last 2 years. We've got an amazing feasibility study done on our site at Paradise Fields, courtesy of the Beaver Trust, whose help we've been really, really appreciative of. And then in the last year, I suppose, a lot of the process has been applying for a license from Natural England and convincing them that this is a good idea. As Elliot said, we do strongly believe that it's only a matter of time before beavers will turn up in Greater London, and we believe it's valid and justified to try and figure out how to live alongside them at this stage in a controlled way. So the three kind of key objectives that we have for the Ealing Beaver Project, and what we put to Natural England to say that this is a valid project and we should be doing it. The first thing is to learn how do we manage and mitigate for beavers' effects on an urban river catchment, including looking at their flood mitigation effects. So we know that Paradise Fields was already earmarked by Ealing Council as a potential site, a potential project site for flood mitigation. Downstream of Paradise Fields does have a flooding problem around Greenford Tube Station and the residential streets around there. So we want to study actually, can beavers be a nature-based solution for a problem, especially as we're dealing with climate change and extremes in weather and so on. So that's the first thing, is what benefits hydrologically can beavers provide for us as a community here in Ealing. The second thing is the wildlife value. So Elliot described beavers as ecosystem engineers, keystone species that shape their environment and will have knock-on effects and benefits for lots of other species as well by creating more complex, natural, dynamic wetlands. So one of the main kind of seeds, I suppose, of this idea a couple of years ago for me was looking at the water vole situation in Ealing. Water voles are Britain's fastest declining mammal, unfortunately. They're in big trouble for a variety of reasons, a lot to do with habitat loss, habitat degradation, habitat fragmentation, and our rivers are not as healthy as they once were. They're also under a lot of pressure from the invasive non-native North American mink, which has escaped and is doing well in the UK and is a natural predator of small mammals in the aquatic environment that the water vole just didn't evolve alongside. So water voles were in really big trouble, and in 2009 the Wildfowl and Wetland Trust surveyed Ealing to see if we had any water voles left, and there were 5 sites where they were potentially still there in 2009. So during COVID lockdown, I kind of made it my mission to go out and survey those 5 sites again, and came to the conclusion that it looks like our Ealing water voles are extinct. So looking at reintroduction projects and what we could do for water voles, Elliot has worked on a water vole reintroduction project in Kingston, had him over to have a look at some of our sites. And to my mind, having talked to a lot of people involved in the rewilding space and beaver reintroductions, to my mind, actually one of the biggest parts of the puzzle that was missing for water voles that would have maybe had them a little bit more resilient to these modern challenges was the absence of beavers, because it's been shown that in more complex natural wetlands, water voles can actually cling on even in the face of mink passing through. So we kind of thought, actually, instead of trying to do a very, very involved water vole reintroduction project, which would take a lot of time, effort and money, maybe we could look at reintroducing beavers first and then using that site as potentially a water vole reintroduction project down the line. And then the final part, I think arguably maybe one of the most important parts of the Ealing Beaver Project, is looking at public engagement and rewilding people and rewilding urban human communities to kind of see the value of having nature on the doorstep and having nature-based solutions built into our urban landscape. We think it's going to be really, really incredible to be able to watch beavers, in Ealing, and very, very important kind of engagement tool for people to see that these are not a wilderness species. These are a species that do very well alongside us, and it's a relatively short space of time that we have had them missing from our landscape as well. So for anyone not familiar with the site, Paradise Fields is in the north of the borough in Ealing. And it's part of the Horsenden Hill complex. So it's on the opposite side of the canal to Horsenden Hill. It's a series of wetlands, woodland and meadow habitat. And in some respects, it's actually quite ideal already for beavers. It was one of the many sites that Beaver Trust ecologists came and visited in London, and they said that it was one of the most suitable for beaver reintroduction that they'd seen. So, and this is the main lagoon here on the left. You can see a lot of wet woodland in there. It's very, very dense. We think that one of the reasons perhaps that water voles haven't persisted at Paradise Fields is that a lot of the brooks and the waterways in it have become really overshaded. And when you get overshading of these aquatic environments, unfortunately, it reduces the plant diversity and all of the other biodiversity that can live, because light is the thing that really kickstarts the real complex food chains and webs in the aquatic environment. So in some ways, really, really good, but a little bit degraded in other ways in terms of management and what the habitat could be. So that's kind of how it looks now, or how it looks in the summertime. It's a little bit barer now, but you can see from this satellite image, basically, it is quite an urban area. We do have an industrial estate on one side. We've got the Grand Union Canal bordering it on another, large road networks and things around. And you can see there this capital ring path that passes through the site. That is an open, publicly accessible path that, you know, encircles the entire of London if you want to follow it. But it was really important for us that actually the site remained open to the public and it was fully accessible. And I think that's one of the unique things about the Ealing Beaver Project, is that we want this to be publicly accessible, immersive, inclusive, for everyone to go and experience what beavers can do and see a beaver landscape changing and developing over time. So apart from the first month where Natural England have asked us to close the site and allow the beavers to settle in, this will be a project where you can walk through. You're not excluded from the beaver enclosure. You're going to be included in the beaver enclosure and see what's going on. And I'll leave it up to Roisín to talk about the habitat suitability and some of the hydrological features on site. But just gives you an idea there that a lot of the habitat currently is highly suitable in yellow for beavers to live as is. So we should see some changes over time. We've done a good bit of public engagement work because, you know, a big part of this project is about the community, about people living alongside beavers. So we did have, this is a picture from our Ealing Beaver Day last summer. We did some tours on site and we did a talk in the evening at Horseton Farm. And we did an online consultation really to ask people, is this something that they would support? Did they have any concerns? How could we alleviate any of those concerns if they had them? And one of the main things I suppose that came up was, is the site suitable for beavers? Will the beavers be happy there? And how are we going to safeguard the beavers' welfare, which is extremely important to us? The main concerns, I suppose, are from human disturbance and dog disturbance. So we've been doing a lot of public kind of engagement on site with people using the site currently and with dog walkers. And overwhelmingly, you know, the kind of the attitude towards it is very, very supportive. And even dog owners understanding that, you know, they will need to maybe modify their behavior, keep dogs on leads and things like that. Yeah, so in terms of the logistics of the site, one of the main challenges we have is this has to be an enclosed beaver trial. We can't just get beavers and release them into an urban area and just see what happens and let them go out into that environment because there are risks to the beavers, but also they may end up in areas that are not quite suitable for them. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be enclosing virtually all of the site. The whole of Paradise Fields is 10 hectares in total, and we're enclosing 8 hectares of it. So we're leaving the top kind of driest area that's least suitable for beavers and allowing public access through to the canal towpath on that side. But effectively, we're putting in beaver-proof fencing around the entire site and double gated systems, self-closing gates that will allow people through without letting beavers out. So a bit of a complex design and lots of back and forth with Natural England to ensure that we've thought about everything. You know, the risk of beavers getting out is minimized, and that the beavers' welfare and safety is really something that's very high priority. There's a few challenges with the site. Most notably is access. Retaining public access whilst keeping beavers in is something that's going to be quite tricky. So we're working with a fencing contractor to kind of sort that out. And as I say, it'll be self-closing, double gate kind of airlock systems that people can come through freely and not allow the beavers out. One of the other things I suppose that Natural England certainly were a little bit nervous of is if the beavers escape, where will they end up? And I would say right now, you know, we're anticipating this is a 5-year license. We're not anticipating that a beaver will escape, but it's not the end of the world if a beaver does escape over the course of the 5 years. We're very confident, having talked to Roisín and the others at the Beaver Trust, that we can get a beaver back if it does escape. They're quite conspicuous in their activities in terms of feeding signs and things. So other projects that have had beavers escape from the project, they've got them back fairly easily. Elliot showed you the apples there. Apples are, you know, the way to a beaver's heart. So we will be using live humane traps to catch a beaver if it did escape in future. But yeah, we're not, you know, totally kind of unrealistic about that possibility, and we're prepared for it, and we have convinced Natural England that that's fine. One of the other challenges, I suppose, with the site logistically is just the entry points and exit points for water coming through the site. So there's 2 sources of water through the site. One is a tributary of the Costons Brook, which runs here into the site in the north. under the canal. And another one is the drainage ditches and pond systems on Horsenden Hill come under the canal and into the site as well. So there's 2 large ponds and 2 sources of water through. So we need to grill those and just make sure that those points are quite safe for the beavers and not allow them to kind of get out of the site. We've been doing a lot of volunteering. Some of you definitely in the audience have been involved in that or are pictured here even. So we're really, really grateful and delighted with the public response so far on that. We've been doing a lot of habitat work before bird nesting season to clear some of the vegetation in preparation for the fencing going in. So thank you to anyone who has volunteered there. If you want to get involved as well, do sign up on ealingwildlifegroup.com to our volunteer mailing list and we'll keep you posted. But we've had great fun getting the community involved and there's a real sense of pride and ownership in it as well. One of the other things that we are going to be doing now that, you know, bird nesting season is in and some of the large groundworks are kind of done is recording, doing some baseline monitoring of what's already there and then recording and monitoring that over time after the beavers arrive. So there's several recorder days open to everyone with experts in residence to kind of teach you how to do some biological recording. And you can see those dates here and on Citizen Zoo and Ealing Wildlife Group's website. So I'll stop talking now and I'll hand over to Roisín just to talk about the habitat suitability and some of the practical, I guess, implications of translocating beavers to an urban habitat.
Thanks, Sean. Typically my internet is being unstable, so I can take the camera off, but if you can't hear me, please someone shout or wave. So as Elliot and Sean mentioned, Trust, I'm the head of restoration. So I've worked directly with beavers for over 15 years now, based in Scotland, but as it turns out, working all over Britain. This is definitely a species that during this time, there's been a positive public response to see it restored widely. So we're very excited to try and make that happen. Currently, according to kind of DEFRA and Natural England, the only real mechanism to release beavers in England is through these enclosed projects. Keen to work with, you know, a range of stakeholders and organisations to see these animals relocated. There are a number of wild populations, mostly based in Scotland, which is where my day-to-day is. But increasingly, you can see beavers in wild landscapes around River Avon, around Kent, around kind of Devon. So this is a species that is restoring and starting to spread, especially in southern England. We're hoping in the next couple of years that DEFRA really look to provide a licensing framework for wild releases, and that thing we're definitely very excited about. But for the time being, it's definitely these kind of enclosed projects which really kind of demonstrate what these beavers and the species can do. We've heard, you know, from a biological point of view, from an ecological service point of view, but I think what's really key, why beavers will or won't be accepted in our landscape, is if people will accept them and if we can live alongside them. So projects such as Ealing, it's really important that the local community really kind of supports beaver reintroduction and can live alongside them. So I guess this is one of the key objectives of this project. So as Sean and Elliot have mentioned, there's been a lot of work behind the scenes to get to this point. And, you know, now we have a license application, etc. So it's all go. But before we got to this point, we had to demonstrate, you know, rightly so, people were concerned about bringing beavers back to our urban environment. And as I've mentioned, this is not a wilderness species. In Britain, beavers are living in urban environments. To Perth in Scotland, you can see them in the centre and the river that goes through Perth. You can see them near Bath, and you can also see them near Canty. So this is a highly, highly adapted species that, you know, as long as they've got access to water, and they're quite resilient to that. But to demonstrate, especially for the license purpose, we had to do a lot of kind of modelling and license work. And part of this really involved looking at is the habitat, you know, the number one kind of criteria. We do habitat and beaver feasibility studies all over Britain. And one part of this modelling tool complex that we use is looking at the habitat. A lot of this is based on the vegetation index. Everybody knows, you know, beavers and trees and, you know, beavers love trees, but actually they're more complicated than that. And beavers can live, especially in our kind of milder climates in Britain, on a diverse range of vegetation. So whilst, yes, of course, they do like trees and they like to build with them and eat bark, they also feed on such a wide range of vegetation. So when we look at the vegetation index as part of this modelling, we're looking at the understory as well, the range and diversity of plants that are growing in amongst the trees. And again, how these plants can recover and regrow after beaver browsing and grazing. So part of this modelling is really looking at, well, what potential for that? And as Sean's mentioned already, if you look at the map, especially on the left there, you can see it scores very highly. Yellow is the highest suitability range for beavers. It's not only looking just at the plants, but also the accessibility of beavers to these plants near their nearest water source. They're not a species that likes to move very far from water. Most of their foraging is really taking place within the first kind of 20, 30 meters of any sort of water course. So again, we have to look at where they're likely to access food. So overall, you can see, if you can recognize the kind of boundary of the site that is suitable. And all in the left kind of corner there, we can see what we hope will be the main release pond. Is absolutely surrounded by lots of vegetation. So we had no concerns about how it was and how much long-term forage, because of course it's a 5-year project. So even if we release a pair of beavers or a small family, we know they're going to breed. So we're really looking at the long-term suitability of this site as well. So yeah, next slide, please. And another component, oh God, it doesn't show very well, but I'll describe it. Another component of our modelling is we also look at something which we call the modelling. And I apologise now for the very faded lines in the middle of that. Maybe, Sean, you can help me point it out. I don't know if you can have a cursor or something like brilliant. So down the main, as the cursor is moving, the main part of the site is, there's 2 brooks that pass the site, and that is marked in green. So it's a bluey green. And what that really means is the chances and capacity of beavers to dam is high. Now, that doesn't mean that beavers will absolutely dam everywhere throughout the site, but if and it's likely in the long term that they will dam, because beavers are kind of famous for damming. So especially once they come off the main release pond, it means that they have the capacity to dam. So that means the water courses are narrow enough that beavers sustain dams in that system. Now that's important because we want to see the positive beaver impacts, and a lot of beaver activity really is associated with their capacity to build dams. And just as Sean has mentioned, you know, this site is really important. We're already thinking about, can beavers hold more water on the site? Can beavers be a positive influence to improve water quality? So those things, and so we can see the narrowness of the water courses and the low energy mean that beaver is likely to be quite pervasive throughout this site. And again, if we want to see the benefits of beavers, the whole aim of the project is to see really what they do in this site. And of course, once they come off the main pond, we'd love to see dams throughout the site that route the water into some of these wet kind of field grassland common. That'll be really, really interesting. You'll see there's a line, or hopefully you see there's a red line through the pond and red line through the dam. Now that just means that beavers are not physically capable of inserting dams either into the canal. Now, of course, they're not going to be on the canal. It's just to kind of hopefully reassure people that even if beavers did escape, they're not physically able to put dam structures in either very deep water or very kind of fast moving water. So that's process and some, you know, why we kind of generate these models to kind of show what beavers will or are likely to do on the site. So just to talk a little bit more about where, well, hopefully some of the expected changes we'd like to see on site. Now, this photo isn't from the Ealing project, but it's from a beaver generated landscape in Devon. Now, again, this is in kind of really productive farmland complexes not so far from Exeter. And I think this slide really nicely demonstrates what beavers can do if we leave them to their own devices. So we see a lot of different interesting changes, and these changes can happen remarkably fast. With all the, whether it's a wild population or enclosed population, I think people are always surprised by just, you know, it says it in the title, just how busy beavers can be and just how rapidly they can change stream complexes into more kind of pooled water, slowing down water. So usually in the first year or two, we see quite exciting dynamic changes. And that's the thing about beavers, you know, they're constantly changing the system. So you can go to the same site year after year, and they always kind of are tweaking it and introducing more levels of complexity in it. And from a biodiversity point of view, this is really important because it's this dynamic change that really kind of keeps the biodiversity levels high, because a whole lot of other plants and animals take advantage of these changes beavers can bring. But if we look at some of the kind of breakdown, what can happen? Well, almost immediately, we can see, you know, wet woodland becomes obviously a lot wetter. We can see beaver foraging can change the structure, not only the height and complexity of a woodland, but it also can open up parts of the canopy and let a whole different range of different plants. So automatically, plant diversity goes up, you know, extraordinary, very significant changes. Beavers obviously can also change the amount of dead wood in the system. Now, it's often, sometimes people see, oh, well, killing trees, that's a bad tool to plant more trees, right? But we also have to look at how naturally and healthy a functioning woodland should be. And that includes a dead wood element. So if beavers flood out an area, then you can have trees that drown. And this creates dead standing wood, which, if you think about it, is a really important habitat for things like woodpeckers, for invertebrates. So that's why that's quite an exciting change. Beavers obviously fell trees as well. So you can have fallen dead wood. And again, this just provides a lot more nutrients and complexity into the system. So that's very important. We can see, especially in sites of Ealing, if beavers do put dams into the smaller brooks, the water will almost be pushed out kind of sideways into the landscape. So the kind of wet meadows will get a lot wetter. And again, you'll see changes in the different invertebrates, different plants prey predator cycles that will take place in those systems as well. And again, you know, almost you know, immediately, if beavers do hold back more water, we see quite significant increases in things like vertebrates. So again, you can see how the prey base is really established in beaver kind of wetlands and wet meadow complexes. So hopefully we see all these things. As Sean mentioned already, you know, the kind of important and exchanges we can see where beavers have come back into system where waterholes are either very low numbers or have released after beaver reintroduction. We see significant increase in watervole populations. Again, you can see these species have co-evolved. So beavers make the wetlands more complex. They open up parts of the canopy, for example. So lots more examples of where watervoles can feed, but also they make the whole system a lot more complex. So when predators such as the mink do come through, there's more kind of shelter opportunities for watervoles as well. And there's actually a paper that really displays very nicely how beavers have significantly increased watervole habitat in Devon, actually. So that's one to look out for. And next slide, please. So John asked me just a little bit about actually getting beavers to the site. Part of my day is working alongside landowners that some of which are experiencing conflicts with beavers. So as based in Scotland, we have very significant beaver populations, parts of Scotland that are, I guess, the majority of our prime agricultural land exists. Series of mitigation. As a last resort in some areas, we are looking for beavers and translocate them elsewhere. And that has been part of my day-to-day for many years now. So when projects such as Ealing come along, that's a really exciting opportunity for us to translocate animals that may otherwise be subject to lethal control to areas where they're much more wanted and can obviously do a lot. So part of this process, obviously, you can imagine there's a lot of paperwork, a lot of licensing involved, but we use live humane beaver traps, and these were developed by managers in Europe, being used for many decades. So that's what we use day to day. Obviously, we prioritize animal welfare. So you select a site that has to be, the beavers have to be removed from. We're making sure we're doing a lot of groundwork, both pre and post trapping, to ensure that we get every kind of member of the family. Beavers are highly, highly social. So we're very keen and to make sure that we try and remove a family unit. Once we do trap them, they come into special beaver holding facilities we have in Scotland. They have to do a whole series of health screening tests, and this is required under license, just so that we ensure that we're moving are not only physically fit and healthy, but there's no chance that they're likely to introduce any diseases or parasites elsewhere. But also that we're making sure any animals that we release are fit and are likely to have a good chance of survival as well, because obviously it's not in our interest to move animals that might be either subject to poor survival rates as well. We have a lot of specialized equipment. Like I say, we've been doing this for 10 plus years, so I think we're quite versed in diseases and parasites. We've obviously learned a lot in this time, but you can see this is an animal that on the whole is very easy to translocate. Once you select the site and you move them as a family unit, we've got hopefully high survival rates, and hopefully I haven't just jinxed it to Ealing, but we're very confident that this is a process we've streamlined and we can make as quick and easy as possible. So yeah, hopefully we'll be arriving. I don't know if Sean is going to release any dates when this might happen, but yeah, so that's a move, either a bonded pair or a family unit to the site, hopefully this coming year. Next slide. So like I say, they do go through a whole series of health screenings. Our aim is always to kind of reunite the family and make sure all the animals are fit for release. And these are just some behind the scenes kind of photographs of what we do kind of day in and day out. So yeah, I think that's me, Sean.
Great.
Thanks, Roisín.
Cool. That was brilliant. Thank you so much, Roisín. And thank you, Sean, for your presentation as well. I think it's just really interesting and inspiring to learn about these projects, these little pockets of, beavers coming back across the UK is really exciting. And to have one in such an urban environment where previously you might not have imagined beavers, it's, I think, really leading the way in the conversation and really helping to connect people to these animals, to understand the benefits that they bring, and ultimately to engage, everyone in the wider nature conservation, which is needed now more than ever. I'm sure many people on here have been watching the latest Wild Isles series, which highlights obviously the very best of the UK wildlife. It's been beautiful, gorgeously filmed. And of course, we've got the Saving Wild Isles episode coming out on iPlayer in a couple of weeks' time. And I think it really goes a long way of highlighting that the UK, our Wild Isles, has a lot of amazing wildlife. It really does. However, we are still one of the world's most nature depleted countries. And by having beavers back in that biodiversity landscape, we are really starting to move on the conversation. One of the most dangerous mindsets that I think we have, and one of the biggest problems we have when it comes to tackling the biodiversity crisis and climate change, is something called shifting baseline syndrome. And this is a problem basically where every single new environment, every single new generation gets used to the current environmental norms in which they were born. So for example, I've been to see beaver enclosures in Cornwall, and they're beautifully biodiverse. It's luscious, absolutely amazing habitat. But I don't remember kind of going to see that as a kid. None of us here remember really wild beaver, unless you're very lucky to live next to a current wild beaver population. Very jealous if you are. But very few people, well, no one here remembers 400 years ago when they were so widespread. well, previously to 400 years ago, 500 years, 600 years ago. We don't remember what that is like. So we've all grown up in a landscape without beavers. We've grown up in a landscape where reintroductions can be scary because ultimately it's fearing the unknown. And with shifting baseline syndrome, we become so comfortable in the way things are that we aren't really opening our minds to the bigger picture of what it should be like. We don't know what it necessarily will look like in 100, 200 years from now. But I'm hoping that the generations alive then will be in more of a historic wild landscape than we are today. And there's a lot of reason to hope. And projects like this are, in my opinion, a massive reason to hope. It's a massive step in the right direction. We need to enhance biodiversity and keep having these conversations. And at some point going forward, there'll be massive progressions in the project, and there'll be more wild beaver populations and of course captive beaver populations. We find our footing and we find our confidence with this, which I'm hoping we do kind of quickly. So anyway, if you have any more questions, please pop them in the chat. I will get round to asking our wonderful panel about them all. There's been some really good stuff coming in, lots of really positive things. I'm going to start off with one actually. Roisín, you say you work kind of in Scotland, where there are of course a lot more beavers than there are in England. When it comes to kind of talking about these reintroduction projects, sometimes, of course, it can be challenging. What is the reception like? And is there any difference between the reception of these reintroduction projects depending on the location? For example, in urban areas, is it harder? Is it easier? Are people more excited about welcoming beavers back? What's the kind of the difference there?
I think on the whole, the public is very positive to beavers. Every either public consultation we've done or any project, it's been overwhelmingly positive. I think the fears come from the landowning community, and I think sometimes projects can be nice because almost the fear factor comes in, just as you were talking about first. I think it's a step into the unknown, and people kind of worry about things like, well, beavers equals floods or beavers equals fish eating. There's still a lot of rumors, I guess, public education that we need to kind of respond to. I think when we look at Europe, this is a species that's been widely restored many decades before. Britain was one of the last to do it. So I think we can learn a lot from Europe. And what we see there, again, it's a lot of positivity until beavers almost sometimes move into some of the urban spaces. But again, this is just about educating people and really, I think, reassuring them that there's nothing that will happen in Britain that hasn't happened in Europe. And we know so many beaver mitigation techniques. And I think it's almost about asking ourselves a wider question: what do we want to see? Are we prepared to live with wildlife? Which sometimes means your apple tree in your garden failed. But if you took a step back and protected that tree, problem solved. So I think it's about education and learning to live with this species again. Fear.
Yeah, it takes a little while to get comfortable. I fear of the unknown is absolutely valid. However, in this situation, time is running out and we've got to welcome these guys back, I think. And it's very, very encouraging. I'm going to go to you, Elliot, next, if that's all right. I got a bit question just about kind of the monitoring that's required. Obviously, a project like this is big, and it takes a lot of kind of obviously you've checked over the location, the habitat suitable, but when the beavers arrive and after they kind of get comfortable, what are you kind of looking out to see? How will you know if they've settled in okay? What's the monitoring schedule like?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Megan. So I think one thing to say, part of our condition of our license application with Natural England, when the beavers arrive on site, we're actually going to close the site down for about a month. So we're going to sort of keep, so people won't be able to access that site. So the beavers will have a month just to settle in and get used to where they are, and just get comfortable, I suppose, and then settle in. But then during that period, as Sean said, we're doing loads of ecological baselining stuff over the course of this summer. There's already lots of ecological data for that site already, because there's so many great people in the council. Ealing Wildlife Group have done lots of ecological monitoring, so we'll be able to hopefully see changes in populations of different species over time, because we've got that good baseline. But a really important part of our monitoring, there's a few important elements to it. One is we're going to be deploying wildlife cameras throughout the site. We'll have at least 10 cameras. They'll be strategically placed around the area, so we'll monitor those on a very regular basis. So we'll be able to watch the beavers go about their business and stuff through that monitoring. And also, as the landscape changes, part of the volunteer team. We're going to have regular sort of Beaver Believer sort of patrol people who are going to be walking around the site, and that'll be an important part of the monitoring process in terms of checking the robustness of the fence. So there's lots of elements that are going to come into that. But just very quick, I just want to because there's some really great things that you just said around the shifting baseline syndrome. One thing I just like to just throw in is like sort of in the urban landscape, we always talk about the urban landscapes are typically perceived as concrete and barren and grey and shops and roads, but actually, London is, it can be pretty green. And here we go, we've got 9 million people in London. 84% of people in London, in the UK, live in an urban landscape. So here, what we really want to try and do is challenge perceptions about how our future city, what can look like, where we can live alongside beavers and have that connection with nature. So yeah, I really think we're going to try and combat that sort of nature deficit disorder that people might have in urban environments and try and demonstrate this is how our cities could look in the future, so much more nature filled and so much more resilient to all the challenges of climate change, etc.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that. Obviously, we always say that we live in one of the most nature depleted countries, but we also live in a country when the majority of the nation struggles with some sort of mental health. And I don't think the two are disconnected. I think actually they're quite closely related to one another. So by having, especially in an area like London, which is so heavily densely populated, access to nature can be hard. Accessibility just to green space is really challenging. So having a really exciting reintroduction project from your doorstep is a great opportunity, I guess, for young people to come and see, for schools to get involved. It's an educational opportunity and also a really proud thing to have on your doorstep. If I had beavers on my door, I wouldn't leave. I'd be hanging out there the whole time. Obviously, being well behaved, but I'd be really excited. It's really good. So I'm going to move on. Sean, I have a question from you. This is from a member of the audience. This is from Nick Walker, and Nick asks, how do we judge whether the project has succeeded or failed, and if it does succeed, where will the next phase be in the project?
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously the first marker of success is that the beavers settle in safely and happily and start to thrive on site. As Roisín said, they will likely breed. We have 5 years, and we may have a pair of beavers arriving. We may have a pair with kits that they're having, right now this season, potentially kits from last year as well. So there will be a little bit of management needed. It's an enclosed trial. If we just let them do it and keep breeding, there could be, worries around inbreeding. So we'll need to manage beavers and potentially translocate some of the younger ones later on down the line when they start to disperse themselves. But I think really the key to success on this is looking at what are the objectives and going back to them. Is the public engaged? Is this something that's seen as a positive for the borough? Are there going to be flood mitigation benefits? Are there going to be wildlife and biodiversity benefits as well? So we'll really be monitoring and kind of measuring a lot of those key indicators of success. But for me, I think it is a 5-year project, and we're getting asked quite a bit, what happens then? What's next for the project? There's probably 3 scenarios of what will happen towards the end. One is that Natural England will say, it's a success, carry on as you are. The second one is that Natural England will say, it's been a success, take down the fences. Or the third one is, it's been a success, but wrap it up now and let's move the beavers out and end the show. I think probably the first one is most likely. I doubt that Natural England are going to say take down the fences and allow those beavers to be completely free. So there will be a little bit of management involved. And I guess it's one of the critiques that sometimes you hear with beaver enclosure trials. It's not a reintroduction if they're behind a fence, but we have to work with the kind of the legal framework that we're working with right now. We have to work within that. And we just think that the benefits, the pros here really, really outweigh any of the kind of nervousness or potential cons. And we also, the other success, I suppose, will be showing that, yes, you know what, beavers can sometimes cause a bit of a nuisance or an issue for us if they're flooding the wrong area or eating the wrong tree, but these are things that we can show, they can be managed fairly easy and fairly cheaply as well. So yeah, lots of different aspects to it.
Thanks, Sean. This is a great answer. It's exciting to see those results as they come in over the next few years, as soon as the beavers move in. I'm going to go to you, Roisín, next. This is a question which personally I'm quite interested in. This is from Caroline Bray. She asked, with all the recent publicity about the levels of sewage in rivers, how might this affect beaver release projects, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing we see with this species, they are robust. I'm not saying they're totally sewage, and obviously we don't want it in our systems, but we, after 15, 20 years of seeing beavers and where they will select themselves to live in wild populations, it's not something that seems to deter them, and it's not something from all our health that significant impacts to those animals at all. And I would say I would flip it around. Almost we can see this is the missing species. That if it can dam smaller watercourses, sewage is released, we can see time and time again the water quality improvements from having beavers in a system that sewage might be released onto is overwhelmingly positive. And there's now lots of papers coming out in a pure context that beavers do improve water quality, and that kind of includes systems where sewage is unfortunately pumped in. Now they're not going to change the rivers, so if it's going directly into a river, beavers can't dam rivers. But if it's, if you tank leaking into smaller water courses, or discharge into water courses that can be dammed beavers, we can see there's a positive impact on water quality with beavers in that system.
Great, thanks, Roisín. There's been a few questions about water quality, so I think that helps kind of answer a few of those. I'm going to go to you, Elliot. This is a quick question which says it's been an amazing achievement to raise the money for this project so far. Are there ongoing funds that are going to be needed? How much fencing is there going to be? What's the kind of the practicalities of funding something like this?
Yeah, well, obviously funding is incredibly important for any conservation project, and with this one we've got sort of two sort of principal funders that have come in so far. So initially, Ealing Council are supporting the project financially through something called a community infrastructure mechanism, which means they are going to be giving the project £45,000, which is pretty much helping to cover, that's covering the installation of our beaver fence. So that's fantastic. So that's the infrastructure for the fence ticked. The Mayor of London, for the GLA, are supporting the project through their Rewild London project, which is helping fund some of the ecological monitoring and some of the staffing time associated with the project. So for the first year, we have a significant sort of funding there already secured, but of course there's more money that that we could put into the project to help do a whole series of different things, from more in-depth hydrological monitoring to more community engagement, to more engaging more schools, etc. So we're still always looking out for other funding opportunities. And as you say, one of the most challenging parts of any conservation project is how you build in sustainability of funding. So when those grants come to an end, how you continue to fund it. So there'll be various campaigns and all sorts of things we'll be doing to try and raise money for the project. So we hope to have like a diverse number of income streams that are going to be coming in to make sure the project's sustainable from a financial basis. But yeah, if anybody's on the call with loads of money and wants to give it to the project, we definitely want to talk to you.
Yes, got deep pockets. I'm sure any small amount there, I'm sure it goes a long way. Right, Sean. Now, I don't know whether you're going to want to release this information just yet, so you can tell me. I'm not answering that question. You're going to have to wait and look out on social media, which I will be. But is there an optimum number of beavers for the site? Is there a number that you're thinking of? And practicality, how many can the site really sustain? And that's from Esther Pye.
Yeah, good question as well there, Esther. So the minimum that we're going to be getting, and it's one of the license conditions, is that we're getting a bonded pair of beavers that are already mated up and know each other and get along together in the wild. Most likely that will end up being a family of beavers. And normally what happens is beavers have 2 to 4 kits per year. And those kits stick around the following year. So up until they're about 2 years of age, at least, they'll stay around as a kind of multi-generational family. So we don't know yet, because we can't trap at this time of year, and we're not ready for them anyway. But this is breeding season, and we don't want to take a mother away from dependent young. So we won't be looking at what beavers are available or kind of ready for translocation until the autumn time. So Roisín starts trapping, I believe, in September. And we will identify, or Roisín will identify, a family that would, be suitable to come to Ealing. So we could be dealing with a pair of adults. We could be dealing with a pair of adults and their 2 to 4 kits from this year, and potentially 2 to 4 kits from last year. But the good news is that it's a seriously generous size of habitat for them. I think the Beaver Trust recommendation on enclosure trials is about 2 hectares for each family of beavers. We're giving them 8 hectares. So there's space within that for them to expand, to move to the upper pond. They may completely surprise us and move immediately to the upper pond and create more of their kind of habitats up there. But they definitely have a lot of space. But as I say, over the course of the 5 years, we will have to probably take some beavers out of the system again and maintain some genetic diversity in there. So yeah, it's a question mark, but in October time, we should be getting a family, or if not a pair of beavers.
Exciting. Yeah, exciting to see what happens. And like you said, this kind of thing is always well, in terms of beaver enclosures, it's something that has been tried and tested quite a lot in various parts of the UK. It's something that you know, the Beaver Trust and the teams, you know, are very much kind of familiar with how it works and, you know, the process and things like that. So there's comfortability in that, but also there's freedom to kind of move beavers around if needed and kind of get the right sort of genetic diversity if it comes to that. But again, got a few years to go. We've got to get them in first. Roisín, this is another question from you. Let me just get back up again and scroll down. This is from Sajad, who says it's quite a long one. Obviously, there's a lot of cooperation when it comes to this kind of thing, and obviously it's constant communication and constant talking about it. But he says, due to the fact that one of the main benefits beavers bring is the woody dams, are you in contact with organisations who are responsible for controlling floods in the areas? Those organisations and some of the other consultants are modelling the benefits and effect of natural flood management measures as woody dams are alternating the flood risk in the areas. So how would you let them know and provide the information about locations, size, dimensions, etc. of the dams? And is that a consideration?
Yeah, I might have to pass some of this on because I'm not local. But part of the monitoring, as we mentioned, are to monitor these things. We can see it in multiple projects throughout Britain that actually the measuring the dam dimensions, so that's easy. Measuring how much water potential for storage is huge, but there's tried and tested formula for that as well. I mean, I know the project partners are working closely with the likes of EA to really kind of engage and demonstrate these things, because one of the key benefits in enclosures is that we can document exactly how they act in a natural flood management system, how they might be part of the wider process, and again, how they're going to be part of the larger picture to hopefully prevent flooding downstream. But again, just to really highlight, if there are any particular dams of concern, that might be impacting in a negative way. I mean, dam management is really easy. You think, you know, these beavers have the whole site to mitigate some of their dams is not a problem. It doesn't have any impact on the animals themselves. But I guess one of the more significant benefits of beavers, or areas we're thinking here's a really important species that can help, is absolutely looking at their potential to store water, especially, you know, we look at last year and the droughts, and we can see it even Scott's droughts, maybe not as drastic as England's, but you know, where we saw the water held behind beaver dams, you know, the benefits even to farmland were really quite significant and quite impactful. And if you can look at, there's really nice demonstrations from project that really showed, you know, in landscapes where, you know, the crops were failing or the grass was failing, where the most life were, you could absolutely see behind the beaver dam. So this is a hot topic. What water storage potential. I'll maybe pass over to Sean and Elliot, but I presume I'm not speaking for you, that EA are heavily involved in this, and this is a key objective of the project as well.
Yeah, I would just add to that we've done a lot of stakeholder engagement with, you know, interested and kind of local organizations and individuals who have a stake in this. And as I said, one of the main tick boxes for Ealing Council when we approached them with this was that Paradise Fields had already been earmarked as a potential project for, you know, man-made flood mitigation defences or measures. We've also talked to the likes of Thames 21. Would they be supportive of this kind of project? And they are. We've got official support from the Canal and River Trust. We've spoken to the Environment Agency, and we've spoken to the relevant team within the council that are very interested in the benefits here as well. So yeah, lots and lots of stakeholder engagement and really, you know, overwhelming support for this being a good idea.
There's lots of overwhelming support on the chat, people saying that they're really encouraged and really excited and inspired by it all. And there's been some really helpful and interesting information that's been provided tonight. So yeah, the support is definitely kind of overwhelming in many different ways. So it's yeah, going to be really, really exciting to kind of see. Anyway, I'm going to start wrapping up. So if you have any other questions, do drop them in the chat now. And we will get to them. But I guess from my perspective, we've spoken about how important beavers are ecologically and how they're ecosystem engineers, they're keystone species. They're important. There is no denying that. But I mean, Roisín, I want to come to you. I'm going to go to all of you for this because I think it's a really nice, I don't know, way of like expressing nature connection. But Roisín, why beavers? Other than the fact that they are, you know, important ecology, you've been working with them for a long time. So, you know, yeah. What drew you to the working with this species?
Yeah, I guess not to sound so toppy or anything, but they continually fascinate me. It's, yeah, I say parking all the biodiversity and ecology kind of sides. I mean, I just feel I never get tired of watching what they can do. They're continually surprising, and I think I always learn from them. They're talking about, you know, making space for nature and, you know, kind of mental health. But I think if to sit on a summer evening and to watch beavers, I mean, it's a brilliant experience. And like I say, one that I never get tired of. And I think they definitely capture the public imagination. There's a wee bit of novelty in there. It's a species, like you say, we haven't lived with for many decades. And anyone I know, even the most negative people that maybe are quite challenged with living on their land, there's a begrudging respect for them, I think, ethic and what they can achieve. So yeah, I think people get very excited about them as well.
Yeah, they can do so for such a kind of, I mean, I know they're large rodents, but you know, they're unexpected in every single way in terms of their anatomy, their behavior, just their general impact. They are you know, they're like a nightingale. It's small and, well, smallish and brown, but you know, to see what they do is like a nightingale song in many different ways. Sean, how about you? What you know, obviously you cover a whole range of different wildlife all the time, and you're always about on like great wildlife adventures, and I know Ealing Wildlife Group is really, really important to you. What drove you to start this project?
I think it's just that, you know, I think Elliot has quoted this before, that someone said something like, if we can't even cling on to our rodents in this country, we're in a really, really bad way, right? And I just think the beaver is, you know, a fairly small, you know, mammal, and all the effects it has on everything else, they really just are kind of symbolic of hope and optimism and nature restoration. They're kind of an emblem for that, and for wilder times when, you know, the landscape wasn't so overmanaged or tidied by people. They're sort of a symbol of that lost time. And I think bringing them back, you know, people ask all the time, why beavers in Ealing? I think fundamentally you have to start with, we got rid of them and they should still be here. So let's bring them back with all of the kind of benefits that they can bring, purely on a selfish reason to people, but also to, you know, climate resilience and the biodiversity crisis. They just tick lots and lots of boxes, but I think really fundamentally it's their wilderness and their amazing place in our ecosystems and what kind of effects they can have on those. I just think they're fascinating.
Yeah, hopefully it's a stepping stone in many ways, because obviously beavers are an obvious reintroduction because of the impacts that they have. But if we get comfortable with reintroduction, you know, we can talk about kind of building back that web of biodiversity that we're currently lacking. So potentially this could, well, we're seeing it already, but building confidence.
Yeah, maybe a little exclusive for the audience tonight. You know, me and Elliot are already talking about, why don't we pop up, you know, a nesting platform and try and attract down some white storks to London? You know what? You know, so there's other aspects of this project that could, you know, be rolled out over the next 5-10 years. And you never know, beavers might be back in Ealing, but they might just attract some other things too. So really, really exciting prospects ahead.
Yeah, go beavers in London waterways, white storks flying over London skyline. Why not? Why not?
They belong too, yeah.
They belong too, absolutely. And Elliot, like, how about you? What's your experience with beavers? Did you like go and visit them much? Have you seen much of them? Like, why are you excited about this?
Yeah, well, I think I just wanted to, without repeating what Sean and Roisín said, you know, they are incredibly fantastic species. I've had the privilege of going to some of the beaver enclosures that are in the UK and stuff, which have been, you know, they're sort of, you know, even the air feels wilder when you walk into a beaver enclosure. It just feels like you're walking into a completely sort of biodiverse space. But they are a species that is so emblematic of like landscape and nature recovery. And I think, you know, if we need anything, we need recovery of our nature, and these are a species that can be a real part of that. And what has been so exciting to see is, I think what has most excited me about this project so far has been the community engagement and the response that we've received. You know, if you talk about other sort of species, you know, for reintroduction, you might not get the same sort of affinity and love that beavers seem to engender in people. The excitement, the cool, I think they are generally cool creatures that, you know, nobody can look at a beaver and say, no, I don't like that. I think that's almost pretty well impossible from a physical looking what they're like, a cute creature perspective at least. So yeah, and I think I've been privileged to see beavers in a few little different landscapes, but I can't wait to see them in London, and having that London with, you know, white storks potentially and beavers and water voles, that's a London, that's an urban environment that I would like to live in. So and yeah, I think you know, just so much more stimulating and healthy for people to live in too. So yeah, I think there can be nothing more exciting. One thing I forgot to mention though, Ben very kindly posted a link to a fundraising campaign that we've got in the chat. So if anybody does want to help support the project in that way, look at the chat for that. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's Ben Stockwell who's commented it, and there's a link there. So go to the chat right now. Everyone just go to the chat. Have a look. Be more information on there anyway, so you can get more information. If you can donate, that would also be brilliant. There's also a link up above, I believe, posted by Emma Chard Cummings, all about the volunteering that you could do. So there's lots of different ways you can get involved. You know, the best thing you can possibly do is go out and volunteer. It's a wonderful way to be outside, connect with nature, engage with it. And what a better thing to do than volunteer with a groundbreaking project that is going to be leading the way in conservation, and, you know, will hopefully go down in the history books of where we started turning a corner. So, you know, get out there, get volunteering and support as much as you can. And if you can't support with donations, support with word of mouth. You know, the most important tool that we all have as, you know, activists, and I like to call everyone an activist because we're all active within our environment, is our voices. So talk to your neighbours, you know, go and talk to, you know, whoever you're going to see tomorrow at work, talk to your families, whoever you can, talk to them about beavers, potentially white storks, and just get the ball rolling, get the thoughts going, and get that image in people's minds, get people excited about these amazing rodents back in our landscape, because I certainly am, and I think they're going to change the course of our environment for the better. So it's going to be great. Anyway, I'm going to round up for the evening. I want to thank you all so much for coming and listening and tuning in, spending it's Monday, isn't it? Yes, your Monday with us, losing track of the days. Thank you for spending your evenings, and also just thank you to this brilliant panel who have dedicated, I'm sure, countless hours, sleepless nights, constant, you know, conversations all about this project. That has been a massive work in progress, I know, over the last couple of years, and will continue to be so. And I know that I kind of speak for lots of people, I'm sure, listening. We're all going to be watching with I can't talk today. We're going to be watching with our fingers crossed and our breath held, waiting to hear more about these beaver release. So thank you, Sean, Roisín, Elliot. I take my hat off to you. You're all brilliant, and I can't wait to see what happens next. So yeah, that's it for this evening. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and thank you all very much.
Thanks so much, Megan, for hosting as well.
Yeah, thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Always happy to chat beavers. It's never a problem. All right.
All right. Good luck.
See you later, everyone.
Bye.